It's important that you know that everyone's tote bag is going to look a little bit different depending on the blue jeans that you're using. Here's a list of all the things that you're going to need to make your tote bag. I have this pillowcase that I thrifted forever ago, and I've been meaning to do something with it. I think it would make a very cute tote bag for a preschool teacher or someone who works in like a daycare. So that's what I'm going to be using today. I have selected the blue jeans I'm going to use. All right, I'm going to cut the leg, and then I'm going to do the same thing to the other leg. I have both legs cut off of the jeans. I'm going to find the inner seam and I'm going to cut that straight across to open up the pants. Now the pant leg is opened up all the way. I'm going to do the same thing to the other pant leg. I've got both of my pant legs cut open. Now it's probably a really good idea to iron all of your fabric so it's nice and flat, which will help keep everything straight when you're cutting it. I still have some wet spots on here from where I was ironing. Now we need to square off the blue jeans. So I'm actually going to take the jeans and fold them up, making sure that this big seam is lined up. And I'm just going to square off the fabric. We're just going to cut. You can take this first panel that you cut, lay it on top of the other pant leg, and then I am going to pin it. This isn't quite squared. Sometimes the stretchy jeans can be a little bit finicky, so I'm just going to re-square my project. Right, that looks good. And now, because these were kid jeans, they weren't very wide. The pant leg right now is only about 14 inches wide, and then if you take off an inch of seam allowance, that means this bag is going to be 13 inches wide. So it's not like the biggest tote bag. So because of that, I might actually cut off a little bit of the bottom just because I don't want it to be a super long skinny bag. So let's do a 13 inch. I think I'm actually going to cut off a little bit of excess 3 inches off the bottom of this bag because I don't want it to be a super skinny long bag. Each bag is different. It really is. It just depends on the size of jean you have, if there's any tears or anything on it that make some of the fabric unusable. And so I don't have an exact pattern for each blue jean bag that I make. I just kind of work with what I have. If you were using a pair of adult pants or a much larger size, you would end up with a wider leg to work with, and then it would make more sense to make it a taller bag. We will be sewing these right sides together, but before we do that, I'm going to show you how to add a pocket to the outside of the bag. This tote bag, I did this. I took the pocket off of these blue jeans and then I sewed it on to the outside of the bag. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So these are the jeans that I got the leg off of. I'm going to seam rip this pocket off. So how you do that is you just kind of have to get in there. There'll be 2 rows of stitches that you will have to seam rip. You'll have this outer portion here and the inner portion. Just take your time with it because we're not trying to rip the fabric. We're just trying to get those threads. You can also go in on the inside here if that's helpful. Kind of pick at those threads. Once you get it started, it does go pretty fast. It's just trying to get those first anchor threads down. It's very satisfying. Now the pocket is off. I'm going to cut off just the excess threads. Take a look at your 2 panels. You might have one that is prettier than the other. You might have a stain or a tear or something. You can be very strategic with the placement of your pocket to hide anything like that. These both look pretty good to me. I think this one might be just the slightest bit prettier because it just seems to be a tiny bit darker than the other one. Now you don't get mixed up with this seam right here because this is not centered. So to find the center of your pant, take out my measuring tape. Okay, we're almost 14 inches. So the center of my jean is roughly here. So I'm going to put my pocket, the center of my pocket right there. And I think it looks good just about right there. I'm going to pin in place. When I take this over to my sewing machine, I'm going to make sure to follow the original stitching rows that were already there. So I'm going to go on this outside row first, go all the way across and up, and then I'm going to go down the second row right here across and up. Let's just do, I'm going to start off nice and slow. Do a quick little back stitch. And we're going to follow the same line of stitching that we already had. You want to do a quick back stitch at the beginning and the end of your rows because that will help lock everything into place. And now we're going to do the same thing but following the second row of stitches. When you're turning your fabric, it's important to keep your needle down so that when you lift your presser foot, the needle is holding your project in place and it can't go anywhere. And then all you have to do is just focus on turning the fabric. So now I have the pocket put on the back panel of my bag. I do want to add a front pocket to this bag. So I'm going to take my pillowcase, I'm going to lay it flat. The hem here is going to become the top of the bag. I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to use the pant leg as my pattern, pinning things so that they don't move as I cut them. This piece right here, we will be sewing it to this panel of our tote bag. That will make a nice big pocket for the front of our tote bag. All right, I just went on a little bit of an ADHD side quest where I took the quilting batting that people will use and I put it in between the pillowcase, and then I stitched all the way around all of the details on the Hungry Hungry Caterpillar. I don't know, I just felt like it would be cuter and it would add a little bit of texture, make him look a little bit puffy, especially the more that you wash it, the more it'll kind of puff up. I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and I'm just going to sew a stitch all the way around like this just to hold everything in place while I'm working on the tote bag. I'm actually using a 3 length for my stitches because it's just to hold it in place. It's not for structure. This is the front panel of my tote bag. I'm going to take the back panel of my tote bag, make sure that the hem of the pants is facing up because that's the top of my bag. I'm going to pin. Now just using a straight stitch at like a 2 length, I'm going to sew all the way down across the bottom and then up the side of the bag. So we're just checking the seams. Make sure everything caught nicely. Don't worry too much if your corners are a little bit funky because we are actually going to be squaring those off. That looks really, really nice. So now we have this nice big pocket in the front. And if you turn it over to the back, you have a nice little bit smaller pocket for like your keys or like your phone or something like that. So now we're going to use this as our pattern for the lining. So I'm going to turn it for my lining. I'm going to pick this fabric. I think it goes really nicely with the Hungry Hungry Caterpillar. I'm going to lay out my fabric and then I'm going to put this right on top. I am actually going to give myself at least an inch at the top to fold over to create a hem. So I'm going to leave myself enough at the top. I'm going to pin everything and we're going to cut. Okay, and now we're going to sew all the way down across the bottom and then up and stop. Do not sew it closed or else you're just going to have a big square that you can't do anything with. All right, I'm going to fold over the hem wrong sides together, about a ½ inch or so, something like that. And I'm just going to do a quick stitch just to hold it in place. I'm not going to worry too much. I'm going to give it about 4 for length. That's just to hold it in place. Now we're going to put this inside of the tote bag just so we can figure out exactly how tall it needs to be. Okay, we're going to line it up. So the inside of our tote bag, I want to attach it to this seam right here on the pant leg. So it looks like it needs to come down. It needs to come down 2 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this over to my iron. I'm going to measure a 2-inch hem, and I'm going to go iron this in place just because that will help me keep it at that 2-inch hemline. Now I'm going to talk about how I square off the bottom of the tote bag. This just kind of gives it a little bit of a wider base like this. So you could have a tote bag that is just flat like this, and then you attach your handles and there you go, and you have a tote bag. But I like giving mine a little bit of a base to work with. They just kind of like stand up on their own after you put your things in it. So I'm going to show you how we do that. I'm going to square this one off. We'll do maybe 2.5 inches. So 2.5 inches from where the seam is right here. I'm going to make a little mark. I'm going to use this marker because that way you can see it. It's about 2.5 inches right here to 2.5 inches up here. And we're just going to square that off. About here. Okay. Same thing on the other side. 2.5 inches from where your stitching is. 2.5 inches up. So about here. Again, pin so that things don't wiggle around while you're cutting them. The bigger your square is at the bottom, the more of a base you will be giving to your bag. It just kind of depends on what you want. Or you can also just leave the tote bag as is and have just a flat bottom like that, and that's totally fine too. So now we're going to take the tote bag and we're going to turn it the other way. Like this. And make sure for your pocket, you're keeping it on the same side as the pocket. Like you don't want to be pushing your pocket over here. We're going to turn it this way. We're going to line up our seam right here. I'm going to pin that. Same thing the other side. And then we will be sewing across both of these. We also need to do the same thing to the lining. With my sewing machine, I'm going to sew a straight stitch all the way across each of those corners that we did. I'm going to use about 1.5 stitch length. All right, the same thing to the jean portion of the bag. Take out your pins, cut off your excess thread. We're going to turn this bag right sides out. Oops. Oh, I like that. Oh, it's so cute. Once you start filling your tote bag with things, you can see how it'll just kind of like hold itself up, right? And then the lining of the bag, you can leave it as it is. You don't need to turn it right sides out because we're actually just going to be putting it straight into the other like that. And if we measured right, it should line up very nicely with the lip of our denim hem, just like that. Now, before we put the bag together, we do need to make the handles for the bag. So we will be working on that next before we finish assembling the lining and the outer portion of the tote bag. The average tote bag strap is 20 to 30 inches long. So there are a few ways that you could do this. You can actually buy nylon straps that are already done, and you can just cut that down and skip ahead to the part where I show you how to attach the strap. You could also use some more remnants of your blue jeans, or if you have another pair of blue jeans, you could cut a nice strip off of the leg that way and make a strap out of that. I don't have enough fabric on these jeans to make a strap that's 20 to 30 inches. So what I'm going to do is make my strap out of the same fabric that I did my lining out of. So I'm going to cut 4 pieces. I want my strap to be 23 inches long. So I'm going to go ahead and cut some fabric that is 23 inches long, and I need 4 pieces that are 23 inches by 3 inches. I just cut out 4 pieces. Now for this bag, you could just start sewing these straps depending on the thickness and durability of your fabric. This cotton is a little bit thin, so to just kind of strengthen it a little bit and give it a little more oomph, I'm going to take a little bit of this quilt batting, and I'm actually going to cut a piece that's 3 inches by 23 inches as well, and that'll be on the inside of the bag handles just to give it a little bit of cushioning. You don't have to do this. If you're using jean fabric for your tote bag, it'll probably be fine. If you have a heavier fabric, it'll probably be fine. This fabric right here that I'm using is just a little bit thin, and I'm worried about it holding up properly. So I'm just going to put a little bit of cotton batting on the inside to give it a little bit more stability. The way that I'm going to attach my cotton batting is I'm going to layer my straps with the 2 right sides together, and then I'm going to put my cotton batting right on top of it. I'm going to pin everything. Same thing with the other strap. So this looks like this. I'm going to cut off my excess thread. I will be doing the exact same thing to the other strap, but I'll just explain it right now. So what I will be doing is folding it over so that the cotton batting or the wrong sides of the fabric are facing each other. I'll fold it over really carefully, and then I'm actually going to take this over to my iron and iron it nice and flat. I folded over so that wrong sides were facing each other, and I brought the strap over to my iron and I ironed this nice and flat. Now I'm going to fold over the edge a little bit, maybe about, I don't know, a 1/4 inch or something like that. Be very, very careful if you have cotton batting on the inside if you're going to try and iron this down, because this can melt if it's not 100% cotton, which mine isn't. And then on the opposite side, I am also going to fold that down about a 1/4 inch. This side I don't have to worry too much about when I iron it all the way down, just to hold that hemline down. This side I'm going to have to be very, very careful with when I'm ironing it. If you're not using any batting on the inside, you don't have to worry about it. Just go ahead and iron a 1/4 inch and a 1/4 inch on either side like that. And then when you go to put it together, they should match up really, really nicely like that. And then you'll just end up pinning it before we sew a top stitch on either side of the strap. I just finished bringing this over to my irons. So now I'm going to join these 2 edges together so that they make a nice little seam with all the raw edges tucked inside. And I'm going to pin every few inches just to hold everything in place. I'm going to do a top stitch all the way down the strap. You can do a straight stitch, you can do a zigzag stitch, whatever suits your fancy. At this point, my microphone died and I didn't know, so I just kept talking. But I'm just going to talk you through and show you how you're going to attach the straps. So take the lining out of your bag. You don't need that right now. And now that the straps are all completed, we're going to pin them in place. And so you can measure this to get it exactly where you want it. I just kind of eyeball it. I do want to sew it right where that seam already is. I want to do all of my stitching on that seam. So make sure when you put your straps in your bag that it will get caught in that seam line. I like to use at least 2 pins because I really don't want anything to wiggle. Also, when you're attaching the strap to the other side of the bag, make sure it's not twisting or anything funky like that. We don't want a funky handle on the tote bag. So again, I'm just making sure that it's getting caught underneath of that seam because that's where I'm going to be stitching it to attach it to the bag. Making sure everything's lining up super nicely, putting my pins in. Go ahead and flip the bag over, and now we have a template for the back side of the bag. And so I'm going to take the back strap and I'm going to line it up as best as I can with the handles that are already on the front side of the tote bag. Again, double checking to make sure that when I'm pinning it, it is going to get caught underneath of that seam line, because that way all of my stitching will kind of sort of just like blend in and become invisible. That stitch line is also where we're going to be attaching the insert for the bag, so it's just going to look really nice and neat. Now I'm just going to follow that hemline that is already on the hem of the pants, and you can just sew all the way around if that's just easier for you, but I don't mind stopping and cutting all of my threads and just checking everything, but honestly either way is totally fine. Okay, so now it's time to insert the insert of your tote bag. Make sure that the wrong sides are facing out so that when you do stick it into the bag, the nice side is now facing out, if that makes sense. We want wrong sides facing each other. I'm going to pin all along the inside of this bag and making sure that my hemline is going to catch right on that seam line again, just because it makes everything look really nice and neat if you can just have one seam line. Also make sure any of your little tails that you have left over from sewing your straps are tucked nicely in between your insert and outer piece of your tote bag. Home stretch. Now all we have to do is just sew along that existing hemline with a straight stitch. I'm using probably like a 1.5 just to make sure everything stays nice and secure. And then once you have that, your tote bag is done.